He tried to frame his own 9-year-old daughter for murder. On a computer belonging to the child who discovered her mother's body, police found a confession, a detailed, guilt-ridden admission to killing Shele Danishefsky Covlin in their Upper West Side bathroom. Except the little girl didn't write it. Her father did. And framing his daughter was just one scheme in a years-long campaign of manipulation, greed, and calculated violence that began on New Year's Eve 2009. That's when a wealthy banking executive was found dead in a blood-filled bathtub, and everyone assumed it was an accident. This is the story of a murder that almost became the perfect crime. Not because the killer was clever, but because he exploited faith, family, and a system that believed him just long enough for evidence to disappear. Before we begin, if you're hungry for more dark true crime, please like this video, share it, and subscribe for more stories that deserve to be told. Let's go back to February 1998 to a Jewish singles mixer in Manhattan, where a 36-year-old woman was about to meet the man who would kill her. Shele Danishefsky was everything New York celebrates: driven, successful, magnetic. A senior vice president for private wealth management at UBS, she built her career from the ground up, working alongside her father and brother at Merrill Lynch before ascending to one of the most respected positions in finance. Her clients didn't just trust her with their portfolios. They trusted her with their futures. That's the currency of wealth management. And Shele was exceptional at it. At 36, she'd achieved professional success. But she wanted more. She wanted family, children, a partner to build a life with. So when she locked eyes with 25-year-old Rod Covlin at that singles party, the connection felt electric. He was charismatic, confident, younger, and apparently just as smitten. Shele called her sister Eve that very night, giggling. "I met a guy. A really nice guy," she said. Then she dropped a bombshell. "We're on our way to the airport to elope." Eve talked her down. But 6 months later, in August 1998, they married anyway in a lavish ceremony. 2 years later, they welcomed their daughter Anna. Then came tragedy. A set of twins, born prematurely, who didn't survive. The grief fractured something in the marriage that never fully healed. In 2006, their son Miles was born. From the outside, they looked complete. Inside, the foundation was crumbling. The imbalance was stark. Shele funded everything: the luxury apartment, the lifestyle, the children, Rod's failed business ventures, and his travel to backgammon tournaments. Because while Shele built an empire, Rod chased a fantasy. He had an engineering degree, but couldn't hold a job. Instead, he poured his energy into online backgammon, positioning himself as a professional player in the gambling circuit. Shele's family watched the dynamic with growing concern. He doesn't get a job, Eve remembered. He goes to the gym twice a day and just hangs around the house. It was frustrating her. By 2009, the marriage was beyond repair. Shele discovered Rod was having affairs. Multiple women connected through the backgammon world. When confronted, he suggested an open marriage, as if betrayal could be negotiated retroactively. Shele filed for divorce. The proceedings turned vicious. Rod didn't just resist. He waged war. In May 2009, he called Shele's employer at UBS, claiming she was abusing drugs and stealing from their joint accounts. UBS investigated. All of it was false. In July, he took their young son to the hospital and told Child Protective Services that Shele was sexually abusing the boy. Investigators quickly determined Rod had coached his son into making the claims. They were completely unfounded. Still, the accusations kept coming. Rod called Shele ugly, belittled her appearance, and screamed at her in front of the children. She obtained an order of protection and had him removed from their apartment. But Rod didn't leave the building. He moved directly across the hall. Same floor. A few feet from her front door. He kept a key. He entered her apartment without permission. He set up a camera in the hallway to monitor her comings and goings. In a letter to her sister in January 2009, Shele wrote, "I am very scared that at some point in the future, All his anger and rage may result in something bad happening. By December, Shele had made a decision that would seal her fate. She removed Rod as a beneficiary from her UBS retirement account, naming her 2 children as sole heirs. And on December 30th, 2009, she told him she was cutting him out of her $5.27 million will entirely. The meeting with her attorney was scheduled for January 1st, 2010. She never made it. December 30th, 2009 started like any other day for Shele. Her hairdresser came to the apartment to give her a keratin treatment, an expensive straightening procedure. New Year's Eve was the next day, and Shele had a party to attend. The stylist gave her explicit instructions: keep her hair completely dry for 72 hours. No washing. No gym. If it rains, use a hoodie and an umbrella. Even moisture in the air could ruin the treatment. Shele understood. She went to work, had a quick drink with friends after, then came home by 8 p.m. That's when Rod's visitation with the children ended. After Anna and Miles went to bed, Shele logged into her dating profile. She was ready to move on. Across the hall, Rod was online too, playing backgammon, chatting with a woman from the gambling community. Just before dawn, he went down to the building lobby and spoke briefly with the doorman, asking for a small item. That interaction would later become important. Small moments create timestamps. They become alibis. Hours later, around 7 a.m., 9-year-old Anna woke up and walked into her mother's bathroom. Her mother was in the bathtub. The water was red. Terrified, Anna ran across the hall and woke her father. Rod Covlin called 911. When police arrived, Shele's body was wrapped in a comforter on the bathroom floor, her long blonde hair still streaked with blood. The bathtub was full of bloody water. A medicine cabinet door hung from its hinges, as if she'd grabbed for it while falling. Rod told officers his daughter had found Shele in the tub. He said he'd pulled her out and attempted CPR, but it was too late. Detective Carl Rodermel examined the scene. It looked like a tragic accident. A slip and fall, a head injury, and drowning. But small details nagged at him. Shele had bruising on her lip, scratch marks, and bruising on her right hand. And Rod, who claimed he'd pulled his wife from a blood-filled bathtub and performed CPR, was completely dry. His clothes showed no sign of water. Still, without clear evidence of foul play, the death was classified as undetermined. And then came the complication that would nearly let a killer walk free. Shele's Orthodox Jewish family requested no autopsy. According to their faith, the body should be buried quickly, intact. Within 24 hours, Shele Danishefsky Covlin was laid to rest. Case closed. Or so it seemed. But Shele's family couldn't reconcile what they were being told with what they knew about her. Shele didn't take baths. She took quick showers. She just spent money on a keratin treatment with explicit instructions to avoid water for 3 days. Why would she risk ruining it by taking a bath the very same night? Her phone was missing, then mysteriously reappeared weeks later in an unexpected location. And then there was the violence of the scene. The blood. The torn cabinet. The injuries on her body. Mark Karstad, Shele's brother-in-law, kept replaying the details in his mind. I was convinced this was a staged crime scene, he later told investigators. The family made an agonizing decision. They hired attorneys and private investigators. And they did something that went against their deepest religious beliefs. They had Shele's body exhumed. On March 1, 2010, the medical examiner performed the autopsy that should have happened the day Shele died. What they found changed everything. Shele's hyoid bone, a small bone in the neck, was fractured. There was hemorrhaging in her neck, bleeding in her right eye. These were not injuries from a fall. They were injuries from strangulation, from compression so forceful it snapped bone. The cause of death was reclassified, homicide by neck compression. But by then, the bathroom had been cleaned. The apartment had never been processed as a crime scene. No fingerprints. No DNA samples. No physical evidence preserved. The case had started in the wrong direction. And now, investigators had to rebuild a murder investigation from fragments and memories. Rod Covlin became the primary suspect. But without physical evidence, prosecutors knew they needed more. So they watched him. And what they saw was chilling. Rod fought for custody of the children, losing badly when his parents were granted guardianship. He drained Anna and Miles's college funds, stealing $84,000 to finance his life with a new girlfriend. And then his behavior escalated into the realm of the unthinkable. Enter Deborah Oles. A married mother of 3, Rod had met through backgammon. They began an affair months before Shele's death and continued seeing each other afterward. At first, Deborah believed Rod was innocent. "I never saw the monster that I eventually came to know until later," she told Dateline years later. But as time went on, Rod's mask slipped. She witnessed his violent temper during physical fights with his parents. And then she began hearing his plans. Rod was obsessed with accessing Shele's fortune, which was now held in trust for Anna and Miles under his parents' control. He viewed them as obstacles, so he plotted to kill them. According to Deborah's testimony and recordings she made, Rod considered multiple methods, poisoning them with ricin or rat poison, having Anna slip it into their tea, setting their house on fire during Hurricane Sandy when alarms would be disabled, breaking into their basement, murdering them, then burning the house to destroy evidence. He even purchased a disguise, a wig and makeup, planning to pose as an election canvasser and attack his own mother with a karate chop to the throat. None of these plans came to fruition. But Deborah recorded them. And in 2014, terrified by what she'd heard, she brought those recordings to the NYPD. Investigators also discovered something else on Anna's computer, a confession. The document, written as if by Anna, described how she'd pushed her mother during an argument, causing her to fall and hit her head in the bathtub. It was detailed, emotional, guilt-ridden. Except forensic analysis proved Anna hadn't written it. Rod had. He'd accessed her computer and typed a fake confession, attempting to frame his own daughter for the murder she discovered. On November 1, 2015, nearly 6 years after Shele's death and just 2 months before Rod was set to inherit over $1.6 million from her estate, police arrested him for murder. The trial began in December 2018. It lasted 9 weeks. Prosecutors acknowledged they had no physical evidence, no DNA, no fingerprints, no murder weapon. The scene had been compromised from the start. But they had something else, a pattern of behavior that pointed to one person. They walked the jury through Rod's motive, the $5.27 million well he was about to be cut out of. His opportunity, living across the hall with a key to her apartment. He means a martial arts expert trained in chokeholds and combat. They presented the emails Rod had hacked, showing he knew Shele planned to remove him from her the day after she died. They called Deborah Oles, who testified about Rod's violent temper and his plots to murder his parents. They showed the fake confession he'd written on Anna's computer. And they asked the jury one question. Who else had all three? Motive, opportunity, and means. Defense attorney Robert Gottlieb argued the case was built on circumstantial evidence, that the botched initial investigation made it impossible to know what truly happened. The jury deliberated for 2 days. On March 13, 2019, 9 years and 3 months after Shele's death, they returned a verdict, guilty of second-degree murder. At sentencing on April 10, 2019, Shele's family finally spoke. Her brother Phil said, "He ruined our family with his purposeful murder of Shele to steal her money. When he murdered Shele, he broke us all to pieces and shattered our lives." Rod Covlin was sentenced to 25 years to life in prison. But even then, the tragedy wasn't over. Anna and Miles, now teenagers, stood by their father. They believed in his innocence. That's the cruelest wound domestic violence leaves behind. Children forced to choose between grieving one parent and losing the other. This case exposes three devastating truths about intimate partner violence and murder investigations. First, separation is the moment of greatest danger. When a controlling partner senses they're losing access to money, to power, to a person, the risk of lethal violence escalates dramatically. Shele wasn't killed in a moment of rage. She was killed one day before she could legally cut Rod out of her life. Second, the first 48 hours of an investigation are everything. When Shele's death was labeled an accident, critical evidence vanished. The bathroom wasn't processed. No DNA collected. No fingerprints lifted. By the time the truth emerged, the physical proof was gone. Third, financial control is a powerful motive for murder. We often imagine domestic homicides as crimes of passion. But Rod Covlin's crime was calculated, cold, and driven by greed. He didn't kill Shele because he loved her. He killed her because he needed her money. On New Year's Eve 2009, while New York City prepared to ring in a new decade, a 9-year-old girl woke up and found her mother dead in a bathtub. The death was called an accident. The body was buried within 24 hours. The apartment was cleaned. The case was closed. If Shele's family had accepted that story, if they hadn't pushed, hired lawyers, demanded answers, and made the agonizing decision to exhume her body, Rod Covlin would have inherited millions. He would have gotten away with murder. Instead, he's in prison. And Shele's story became a warning. The most dangerous person isn't always a stranger. Sometimes it's the person who used to live across the hall. What do you think? Should the initial ruling of accidental death have been challenged sooner? Could this case have been solved faster? Let me know in the comments. And if you want more cases where the truth takes years to surface, subscribe now.